friends, welcome to Red Eyes Radio. My name is Henrik. We are glad to have you with us today. We have an important program ahead of us. We are very grateful to finally have Brian Garrish with us. If you're not familiar with the work and research that Brian has done about the organization called Common Purpose, this is definitely the time to get into it. We're going to go over some of the background on Common Purpose, but also go through some of the recent developments in regards to Brian's investigations. There's a few excellent videos available on Video Google and YouTube that goes into great depths of this organization. Presentations these are of Brian Garrish. You can simply search for Common Purpose or Brian Garrish on either Video Google or YouTube for more about these videos. But just to give you kind of an official phrase, I guess, even from Wikipedia here, it says that Common Purpose UK is an influential educational charity delivering a range of leadership training programs to decision makers drawn from all sectors of society. A lot can be said about that right there, and we're going to go into some of this here today. I want to mention that Brian is based in the UK. He has a background in the military, and he's primarily been looking into what has been happening with Common Purpose in the UK, but this is an organization that exists in many countries, primarily on the European continent, but also elsewhere, and sometimes even under a different name. And in one of Brian's presentations, he mentioned that he was working in Plymouth when he first heard of Common Purpose, and he's been fighting to expose their agenda and digging up information on this organization since that point. And also one final thing I want to mention is that Brian Garrish will be upcoming in one of the speakers at the Alternative View 2 conference in London. And this is this coming Friday, the 29th of May. And I've talked with Ian Crane, who's behind AV2 conference, and there are still few tickets available for you guys who are close in the area, who have the ability to come on short notice. And Brian Garrish is one of these talks that you definitely don't want to miss. So if you want to know more about that, head on over to thealternativeview.co.uk or avii.co.uk for all the details, tickets, speakers, schedules, and so much, and so much more there. So with that, welcome to the program, Brian. Very nice of you to come on today.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for such a kind introduction.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it, Brian. We know how busy you are, so I just want to get things rolling here as soon as possible. And maybe for those who haven't heard about Common Purpose, maybe you can just lay the background for us. I know you've done this many times, Brian, but it will be good for people who have no idea what the Common Purpose is.
Okay, well, if I do it very quickly, if I go back to about the year 2000, maybe a little bit before, 2000, 2001, I'd been working in Plymouth. I'd already left the Royal Navy, and I was starting to get what I call comfortable, which is that I had a share of a business, and I was starting to earn some money. And together with another ex-Navy colleague, we decided to see whether we could help one of the local communities in Plymouth in an area called Devonport, and that is close to the Royal Naval Dockyard. And over a number of years, it's suffered as an area, and the community has suffered from long-term unemployment, particularly amongst younger people. And we came up with the idea of trying to introduce skills training to help get younger people back into work. And we were going to do this by getting them involved with the repair and build of small wooden boats, which seem to fit into the maritime theme of that area. And we started the project. We got a lot of support from local people, and initially we were getting help from the city itself, so from Plymouth City Council, and we were also getting help from organisations which we know as Quengos in UK. They're basically bodies which are not part of the official government structure. They sit to one side, but they're overwhelmingly funded by government money. So we started to move the project forward, and at a point where we were being encouraged to bid for some grant money to help us set up the project properly, really didn't know quite what had happened, but we decided to carry on with the project without any form of help from the public sector. And within a short space of time, we started to receive intimidating phone calls and emails, and that was to escalate in time to quite unpleasant threats and death threats and threats to business colleagues and family members. When we started to investigate what was causing this, a gentleman one evening said that he thought the problem was common purpose. And I was very intrigued with this because I'd never heard of the organisation. But we then started to ask questions, and we discovered the organisation Common Purpose operating in Plymouth, but it was under the surface. We'd never heard of it before, but we found colleagues and many other people involved with it.
Hmm.
Once we really started to investigate, we were quite stunned to find that a charity, Common Purpose is registered as a charity, but it was recruiting people as future leaders, and it had them installed in all sectors of the city. So they were in the local council, they were in the police. At one stage, the head teacher of every school in the city was Common Purpose trained. They were in the hospital, the Chamber of Commerce, and some of the larger companies. And what it seemed to represent, and obviously in the early days we were learning, but what it seemed to represent was that a network of future leaders with a particular political agenda had been installed into the city. And what they were able to do by networking and working together was to steer the political and social agenda of the city.
Mm.
And if I jump forward a bit, if a lot of work over several years then revealed that this system was actually working throughout UK.
Mm. And what was it in your particular work that they did not agree with, or why were you? Do you know why you were being stopped in the things that you and your partner were trying to set up?
Well, in the beginning we didn't understand that. That wasn't clear at all. But what we came to realise was that Common Purpose is creating so-called leaders that are working to create a new type of society. And their vision of society is not based on the key foundations that we all believe in at the moment. And so what we began to understand later was that Common Purpose is working behind the scenes to gradually help break down the established social and political structure in UK. And what we were doing in a local area was actually reinforcing the status quo. We wanted to help people get back into work. We wanted to give them skills. We wanted to start to give them power and respect back in their own community. But what we now know is very much the Common Purpose agenda is to actually be pulling apart society to destabilize it. So we got in the way, effectively.
Tell us a little bit about Julia Middleton, who's behind Common Purpose. She founded this in back in 1989, is that correct?
Well, it was Julia Middleton who claims to have founded Common Purpose, and she claims to have initially started it with Anita Roddick, who was the lady who founded the Body Shop, which is a very famous chain of shops selling natural healthcare and beauty products. And that was in about 1985. But the interesting thing is that Julia Middleton seems to appear on the scenes from nowhere, and within a few months she has £500,000 to start the Common Purpose programs. Now, if you talk to any ordinary people who've been involved in charitable work, raising money is very difficult, and it's certainly very, very difficult to raise sums of about £500,000.
Yeah.
If you start to have a look into Julia's background, you find that she was previously involved with the Work Foundation, and she was also involved with the organisation Demos, both of which are highly political organisations. She was born in Britain, but her little biography says that she was educated in France, and she spent quite a bit of time in America, I think, where her father was working. So she's a very interesting lady that she seems to pop straight out of the political network into a charity, and then suddenly she's got a very large sum of money.
Absolutely. And where do you know at this point, Brian, where this money primarily have been coming from?
Well, we know some of it because Common Purpose is quite keen on boasting about money. We know, for example, that a large amount of money comes out of the major banks, of which Deutsche Bank, the German bank Deutsche Bank, is one of the key contributors. But in her own books and papers, Julia Middleton says that in the early days, some people gave such large amounts of money that she had to return it because she felt that would buy Common Purpose. So when you read the story about the funding of Common Purpose, we know that a lot of money came from major banks. We know that money has come from major corporations, whether it's British Telecom or oil companies. What we see is her receiving money from what we will call is the elite institutions.
And just as a side note here as well, you mentioned Demos. I quickly looked into this and founded back in '93 by a former editor of a magazine or journal called Marxism Today from the Communist Party of Great Britain. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. And Demos is of particular interest to us now because it was used as one of the primary think tanks to help push forward policy for the Tony Blair new Labour government.
Yes.
And it is absolutely fascinating to watch Demos being used now to form policy for both the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives in UK. So we know that Demos is one of the key players in the background, and Julia Middleton obviously had a strong grounding in that Marxist background.
Do you think it's primarily a socialist kind of ideology behind this, or is it more? I know that you talked about this, that it seems to be kind of a merger between capitalist on one side, but also socialist on another, and seems to be merging into this new kind of synthesis between these two sides, right?
Are you talking about the ideology for Common Purpose or Demos?
Well, I guess we can talk about it in terms of what Common Purpose is doing and where they're heading.
Yes, well, a synthesis is a very good description because if you look at them, you get hints of straightforward communism. But if you look at it from the mixing with a corporate elite, and Julia Middleton is certainly in love with international bankers, I'll come back to that, you start to see that it's got an almost fascist side to it. Now, from my own research, and I'm very happy to be corrected by people who know more than I do about political ideology, but when I've researched it, I start to come towards Gramsci